Welcome to the Millionaire Mindcast, where we broadcast weekly interviews with millionaire minds from across the globe to empower you on your journey of unlocking a rich and fulfilling life. It's time to unleash your millionaire within. Now, here's your host, Maddie A.
Well, I'm excited to welcome to the show, Tamar Hermes. How are we doing?
We are so good because we just went to the hairdresser after 4 months. Yay, it's a good day.
There's something that is so refreshing and you kind of feel like you have this extra swag and pep in your step when you walk out of the hairdresser, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? I think we all have a new appreciation for our hairdressers, a new love that we will never forget after these last few months.
Yeah, and the last few months have been crazy. I'm just curious, in your world, being that you're somebody who's got a lot of businesses, a lot of investments, a lot of opportunities, you're serving a lot of people. How has your last few months been just personally?
Well, what's interesting is that it's actually been fantastic. And, I know I say that with a hesitation just because I know for a lot of people it hasn't been, but all I can say is that I think on the other side it will be. And as soon as they embrace this opportunity, they're going to see a lot of things moving and shaking. And for me, for most entrepreneurs that are driven, that are investors, we just go after it. We just, as soon as something happens, it's just like, okay, I started doing challenges. I started reaching out to clients. I started finding new investments, and they were all there. They were all there. So it's been good, and I feel very grateful. I've definitely gone to the edge during this time, and I think that's the way we all need to live.
Yeah, that's where you find what you're made of too, is when you kind of push things to that edge and you forge yourself into somebody new. Because oftentimes, right, when things are good and you're comfortable, not that people purposely get complacent, right? But when you don't have something forcing you to grow and to expand and to stretch yourself, it is easy to fall into that, right?
Yeah, it's such an important point what you're saying, because it's so true that when people, when you don't stretch yourself, it's so easy to be complacent, and it's also easy to just kind of say, "I'll do it next week, I'll do it next month, I'll do it next year," and that time doesn't really happen. You don't get that time back, so it's not easy, right? It's not necessarily an easy journey, but it's a fulfilling journey. I've been having a pit in my stomach for the last few months because there've been all kinds of movement going on with investments and with relocating to Austin, Texas, and a lot of stuff going on.
You do. You have a lot going on, and it's funny. People always say, remember that you were praying for the problems that you have now, right? And I always say, the goal is to make whatever ceiling you have hanging over you, whether that's a financial ceiling or a career ceiling or a relationship ceiling or a health ceiling, right? To find a way to break through that and make that ceiling your new floor. And it's crazy when you stop and you look at like, man, what I'm doing right now is what I was once praying for, a long time ago. We forget to just sit and reflect and be really grateful for where we're at today. And yet we're always in a hurry to get to that next level and that's next milestone, right? That's the curse of the entrepreneur. But I'm curious for you, right? This craziness that you're in, I know that you came from very humble beginnings, and it wasn't always this big, beautiful, amazing, abundant life. Where did this all start for you?
Yeah, no, definitely not. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and my mom was a pioneer in Israel, fighting for the land, to become Israel. And it was, when they came to this country, it was all about, they were just so grateful, first of all, just to be free. And Israel obviously became free, but my mom used to have Syrians shooting at her from the border as a child. So it was a pretty intense, intense situation over there. And so they were just happy to have peace. But they weren't very driven or ambitious out of the norm. And I just kept seeing, what else is there? And I just felt like, is this all there is? Like, you just kind of go through the steps, you just kind of get a job and live your life and just, it's kind of, and there was nothing like when I was 14, I wanted a car. And if I wanted a car when I was going to be 16, I had to work for it. And so I ended up getting a job and saving $5,000 and buying my first car. And my mom brought us up in an affluent area, even though we were poor. We were just kind of the ones that were using an address. And they all got really nice BMWs, and I had this Ford Escort, and it took me a really long time to feel like I even deserved or it could even play in that field.
And how did you do that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? Of like, hey, my mom and my dad, were this, right? Whether they came from this or they thought this way. A lot of people don't feel worthy of like, I want more. I want to achieve more, but do I really deserve more? Am I worthy of this? Right? How did where do you think that came from? And is that something that people can build and create a muscle for to earn that belief system and create those results in their life?
Oh gosh, absolutely. And you know what? I would say it took me years. I mean, I would say, until I was like 40, I was still fighting it. I was still fighting, being the poor kid and the one that wasn't smart enough or didn't deserve enough, just because of stories I had told myself. And, what got me through it was really just one of the things that I did get from my parents. And one of the things that I think helps is starting to look at the things you did get, because we all get gifts, right? Yeah. And for me, it was that survival. I mean, my father survived the Holocaust. Hello. Not an easy place to survive. Absolutely. And not an easy journey at all. And so, I felt like, if I fell, I was just going to get back up. I was going to keep driving toward it. And, I love the book, Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, about how we have a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and how important it is to just keep honoring that, we're all on a journey, and keep stepping into the growth mindset. Don't stay, because the fixed mindset is the one that tells us this is it. You're born the way you're born. You're going to get what you get, and just kind of shoveling through it. And that's not what really any of us want. We all want to make our life, whether we want more money, whether we want a certain relationship, whatever it is, we don't want to be a victim in our lives. So I really think that I continually just kept working and doing a lot of inner work to really let go of the stories. When you start to relate to people and you start to see, hey, I'm human, you're human, you start to see it a little bit differently in terms of, I used to think like, oh, here's Matty A's like, he's like flipped 200 houses. He's got this business. He's got that, who am I? Like I've done this and that, but we're all people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things too, where, I don't want to say, because I think everybody deals with the imposter syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. And I've heard two different takes from many people that I respect on both sides saying, don't ever do the fake it till you make it, right? And then at the same time, like that's kind of how I built my business, was like, hey, I'm going to act as if I am this expert who has done 200 houses. I am going to act as if I have the ability to go and buy all these properties, even though I have no money whatsoever, right? You kind of have to build up this false sense of security that you are capable, that you are equipped, that you do have everything you need within you and around you, right? Because if you start to believe the alternative, that ultimately doesn't serve you in creating that physical reality around you and in your world, right? So totally. I love that, right? You have to have this confidence, and anybody that's listening, and this is what I'm hearing from you, right? What I've really seen from all successful, whether that is successful moms, successful, business owners, successful politicians, community leaders, they bet on themselves. They know that even though in times of uncertainty, they don't have it all figured out, they may not have a clear vision, they may not know exactly what to do or what to say, they're still going to bet on themselves that they can fill in those gaps, right? And so as you were kind of filling in those gaps in your own journey, when did you kind of have that first big win in your career where now you started to go, okay, I'm on the path to creating the success that I really want and desire for myself?
Well, I think I had some good breaks. I kept fighting, I kept pushing. I graduated from college. I was a waitress because I wanted to be an artist and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I thought, I'm going to be a waitress for the rest of my life, which is not bad if that's what you want to be, but I didn't want to be a waitress.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't what I wanted. So it was, then I started getting into some great positions. And when I was an executive at ABC for several years, I started to save, and that's when I bought my first duplex, which was many, many years ago. And at this point, and I think that was a big turning point for me, where I kind of started to see, hey, not only like, it was like getting my car was one thing, right? Because that was one thing, like a car is a big deal. Like you got to, when you live in LA, it's kind of hard without a car. So, I mean, I really needed that if I was going to make a play for it. I couldn't get very far without it. Especially, 25 years ago, we really had no public transportation. Right. And also buying my first property and seeing, I can buy property too, and what that looked like, and seeing that I could start to figure it out was a big turning point for me.
Why real estate? Why for you? And did you kind of, obviously you said you wanted a bigger life, and I think everybody that's listening to the Millionaire Mindcast has dreams and goals of, one, financially becoming more abundant and secure and stable, but also expanding and elevating themselves in all of the gardens of life. For you, why did you choose real estate? And did you always say to yourself, like, I want to be a millionaire? What was your kind of wealth building mentality at that stage of life?
Yeah, no, I didn't say I wanted to be a millionaire. I was one of those, if I could just make six figures, if I could just make multiple six figures, I was inching along, which I do not recommend. I would say go big. And, it wasn't until I think, it just kind of, my husband and I kept doing our thing. And then before I knew it, I was like, God, we looked at each other, we were like, we kind of have a lot of money, like what happened? Like we're, and then, it was like, wow, I mean, this stuff works.
So you guys were really disciplined, though, it sounds like, in that process too, where you weren't living above and beyond your means.
Big time. Yeah. I mean, we live very comfortably, but by no stretch did we live beyond our means. There were a couple things that we've done during our journey where we took a little more risk than we normally, but most of the time, and this is the thing that I really try to say about real estate, which is that it's not that risky. Like, look at the variables, and that was kind of the same thing. Like, we wouldn't buy an $8 million house because we know that we're not making that much. And we're not going to bet on us making that much because there's too much of a spread from what we made every year. Right. So, when you live within your means, then you can take that money and you can compound it and make more money. And that's kind of exactly what we did. So we lived well, we continue to, but we still don't spend every dime. Now I'm really working on legacy, on philanthropy. Where can I go now? Like, how do I make sure my kids are set up for the rest of their lives? How do I give back more?
I love it. And, especially when it comes to people that want to build wealth, I always tell people, wealth is made in the crock pot, not in the microwave. And as I am a millennial, right, and I want that instant hit of dopamine and gratification, when it comes to unlocking kind of that whole life millionaire, you're living abundantly in every single pillar and garden, it does take time, right? And I've heard you talk about how this get rich quick or get results quick mentality can often be very dangerous. Why do you think that is? And what do you say to the person that may be coming into this wealth building journey and this kind of, on this path that could impact them to give them a better perspective in how they navigate that journey?
Well, what I would say is that, like we were just saying, real estate works if you look at the variables. So if you're looking at a deal and it just, it sounds like, you just put in 50,000, you're going to get back 150, and there's no risk and just go for it. You'll make it in like 2 months. You have to look at, is that practical? Like, do I know what the property looks like? Do I know what I'm investing in? Do I know what's happening? And most of the time, those deals, that kind of spread carries a considerable amount of risk with it. And so I think you need to look at it. And I think that if you stay, like maybe you look at a property and you think, okay, it's 50,000 to get in, it's going to cash flow at $750 a month. I know I'm going to make some money, then I can buy up. If you look at it that way, then you have a plan, then you're creating building blocks. And time is on your side. My God, for real estate, it's the best. Like, time is the best because everything will work for you if you're patient. And I mean, in fact, I think part of the reason why my husband and I were so successful was because we really weren't, a lot of the things we were doing, the past, several years, we've been much more aggressive, but early on, I mean, we were just buying and just kind of buying in the right areas and holding on. And I mean, things were just appreciating. You buy in the right areas. So I just think that for get rich quick, sometimes I even have clients, sometimes a client said to me the other day, like, I want to make 20% on my money. And I was like, well, that's great. But, if you want to make it and you think you're going to do that like right away, you really need to just look at the deal. It's possible, but just make sure you know what you're doing. So I think that it's best to just look at the variables and not worry about like trying to get to the $1 million in a week, but maybe try to have a plan for a couple years.
How critical were the mentors in your world at that time, right? A lot of people have kind of this do it myself mentality. Other people are going, hey, if I can surround myself with people way smarter than me, they're going to give me that confidence, those resources, those hacks to get there quicker. What did that look like in your journey?
That's such a good question. I think that I had a do it myself mentality because when you're doing investments, it's scary to go, hey, here's $100,000, I'll see you on Sunday kind of thing. I mean, obviously there's a lot more to it, but still, when I'm doing the deal, like I'm controlling it. So for a long time, the investments that I like, even my husband and I sometimes say, like when we're selling a property, my husband will look at me and say like, but I know where that property is. Like you're going into like these deals with other people, like, where is it? What is it? kind of thing. And so there is that sense, like I was doing a lot by myself, but what I realized was I was working really, really, really hard.
Right.
And at a certain point, it's not sustainable because you only have so many hours in a day. And if you're doing everything yourself, you need to partner up. And so the answer is mentors really helped me once I decided to find mentors and to trust mentors and to trust the right mentors. And so, because I kind of also had some mentors along the way that steered me not in a great direction.
Well, talk about that, because I think that's really important, right? Is a lot of people, mentors have been one of my greatest life and business hacks out there. And yet at the same time, I was also very clear on the core values that I wanted to see and felt aligned with when it came to mentors, their reputation, their businesses. I just didn't want somebody that was successful, right, and had a lot of money, giving them permission to speak into my life and influence me. And yet, because I had already had a lot of other quote unquote mentors, right, that were bad influences on me, and ultimately I went down different paths and got into opportunities or, really trouble, right, when I was aligned with the wrong people. So how does somebody kind of, audit who is the right mentor for me, and how do I find that individual to make sure that they don't lead you down the wrong path or lose you money, right, or misguide you?
Totally. I mean, that's a great question. I would say one of the things that I think really helps a lot is when you find a mentor, you're not like a baby, where you're like, mommy, you need to know something. I would say take responsibility. I think the way that I went wrong with mentorship was that I just thought, oh, well, they know everything, so whatever they say is right, without looking at the variables myself. And had I understood more, I would have not probably gotten into those deals, because the deals didn't make sense and I would have been able to see it, but I didn't even take anything on because I was just giving it to everybody else to do. So I think that they're like what you were saying about betting on yourself. You need to kind of bet on yourself even with a mentor, because at the end of the day, it's your decision. Like you can't, I don't blame any of the mentors that I feel like maybe didn't give me the best advice for what my goals really were, because I did the deal. It was my decision. They weren't holding a gun to my head. I decided. So I have to take responsibility for that and say, okay, what can I learn? And when I go into the next, what do I need to know going into a deal that what questions do I need to ask? So you still need to take responsibility. You still need to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, I call that the big boy, big girl rule, right? It's like at the end of the day, we're all big boys and big girls, and your mentor is there to help you in the capacities that they can, but they're human too. So, it's ultimately your decision, and you have to be comfortable, living and dying with the results that you do or don't get, right? It's nobody else's fault. It's not your mentor's fault, right? At the end of the day, you're a big boy, you're a big girl. This is your life. This is your money. This is your investment. This is your business, whatever context we're talking about this in. And it's your responsibility to make sure that you're taking extreme ownership of what decisions you are or aren't making, right? And of course, you have your board of directors around you that kind of give you that counsel and give you that direction and that confidence. But at the end of the day, it's on you, right?
Yeah. And I would just say that, again, it's like, trust yourself and your instinct. Like, there are deals where I look back and I know, like, I didn't understand that deal. Like, I didn't understand what was going on, but they kept saying it was such a good deal. And they kept, showing me the numbers in a certain way. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that seems like it's going to be really good. But if you don't understand it, don't do it. Keep asking questions, keep questioning it. And it doesn't mean, like, you're not going to lose, even if you say no to a deal. Like, I had, someone had called me for a flip deal and to go into it with her, and she wanted like 200,000. And, I didn't do it because I didn't know enough about the deal. I didn't really know her that well yet. And then she told me, she said, I ended up flipping that. I ended up making like over, 325,000 on it. But I didn't feel bad. I wasn't like, oh shoot, I could have made all that money. I was like, it's okay. I didn't know enough about that deal. I'll get the next one. Now I know she's got more of a track record with it. Yep. So it was like, don't feel like that deal is the only deal that's ever going to come to your table.
Yeah. And one of my early mentors said this as well, which I just thought has been great advice. And I love what you said in regards to kind of the gut, because one of my favorite books is Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. And she says, don't listen to your gut, obey your gut. And I've heard many different statistics on it, right? And who knows which ones are actually true, but that our gut actually has more intellectual power than our brain does. And that, right, when you kind of feel those gut feelings, right? Well, when they say I should have listened to my gut, and that become a cliched statement, well, it's because it's true, right? People have been saying that forever, and there's some truth to that. But, in regards to, where I think a lot of people are starting to lean in towards is looking for other people to help them make decisions, and they're looking outward instead of really going inward and trusting in themselves and the work that they put in and the, kind of resources that they've built, and trusting your gut and taking action on that and using that feedback, right? What do you say to the person that's, going, hey, I want to be a millionaire and I want to start building a business, but I don't know what path I should be going down. I don't know if this is the right or the wrong decision. What do you say to that person that's very indecisive?
Well, the first thing I would say is, you know more than you think you know, and you're capable of more than you think you are. So, start honing in. It is overwhelming to want to start a business. It's overwhelming to want to buy property. The big question, where do I buy? How much do I spend? What deal's good? There's all these questions, but, start honing in on something. If you want to start a business, don't feel like, oh, it's too much, it's too hard, it's too this. Don't tell yourself that. Just say, how do I do it? How do I do this? How do I do that? And the truth is all of us start somewhere, I'm talking about how, I started with nothing, and I'm not really I'm kind of smart, I am. But, I didn't think I was smart when I was doing half the things I was doing. I was just pushing through, It just kept getting up and, and being willing to be uncomfortable. And so I would just say, if you have that dream, just go inside, just why not you? Why not? What is it? Why wouldn't it be you?
Yeah. I mean, when you think about what the timeline of Earth is, 4.5 billion plus years old, our good 60 to 100 years here on this planet is, a blink of an eye in that timeline. So why would you not go after the big goals, the big dreams, the big aspirations that you have? And ultimately, right, you shared a really cool statistic with me, and only 5.8% of the US population are millionaires. So obviously that means, right, they have at least $1 million in the bank or in investments. And I'm curious into your perspective, because obviously the past can oftentimes predict the future, but it doesn't always equal the future either. Why do you think there's such an inequality gap with wealth and income, and there aren't more millionaires out there, and it being such a sexy word and people wanting to, unlock that in their lives? What do you think it is about what the world or society has trained us to think, or how it's structured, limits people from really breaking through to getting there? And is it simple enough to break through and get there?
Yeah, you know what? I looking back, I mean, I have to say it wasn't simple for me, but I made it hard, and that's part of the reason why I'm so invested in educating women now, because I really feel like I made it hard. I wish I could say, but that's part of the reason, like when people become mentors, the reason is because we struggled so much and we want it to be easier for you. Yep. But, I would say it's not that hard. I mean, there are, if I would have just trusted myself, I was always on the path. I was always heading there, but it really comes down to what you believe, and just taking step by step, and by I think what happens is there's a lot of resignation because it's far away. Like if you're starting out and you don't have $1 million, you don't even have like 100,000, you're like, how am I going to get there? It just feels so far. But if you just take put one foot in front of the other and start step by step and keep working toward it, the opportunities will start to present themselves. But I think that what happens is that a lot of people feel resigned, like it's not going to happen anyway, so I'm just going to go buy that and lease that BMW, $700 a month. But I mean, like, even if I save $700 a month, how am I ever going to get to $1 million? They just do the math that way. They don't think about like how it compounds, how much of a difference it can make, and how every penny can like make a huge difference. So like it comes back to, again, like you got to invest in yourself, right? Yep. And kind of look at that longer vision.
Yeah. Well, and you said something where it becoming a millionaire is actually quite simple. It's not easy, but the formula is simple in the sense of, when, in my opinion, how I've built wealth and how I've seen people way smarter than me build wealth and who have a lot more of it, is doing like what you said right there. It may not feel big, but having small, smart choices that you make consistently day in and day out over an extended period of time, and you let that compound, that is ultimately what unlocks something that started small, turn it into something really big, right? When you guys said, hey, we got a lot of money. We haven't been doing a whole lot differently, but you guys were making small, consistent choices that were aligned with your vision and your goals. And you did that over an extended period of time. And all of a sudden you look up, right? And you have some real wealth underneath you. And that's when it gets fun. That's when it gets real sexy. But the daily actions that lead to some of those sexy things aren't sexy, right? And so I've heard you say that, it really comes back to, the right disciplines and the right habits and consistency. What are some of the things that you can recommend from kind of a root foundational level that on discipline and on habits around building wealth or around creating, consistency and compounding efforts in your life? What worked for you that might work for others?
I think that the way you wake up every morning is huge, and the way that you start your day. And, I have a routine. I'm very, very serious about it. I wake up, I meditate, I exercise, I drink water, I read, I journal, I do everything every day, kind of the miracle morning, I do it because it makes a difference. Because once I've been like getting dressed and, working from home, and I always get dressed like I'm going out to a meeting or going to meet the most important person in the world, because it makes me feel like what we were talking about, stepping into it. Stepping into who I want to be. And even yesterday, I don't think you weren't on the call. Ben Hardy was on in the Go Bunnins tribe, and he was talking about Matthew McConaughey and how when you ask Matthew McConaughey like what is his best, who's his hero, and he says it's myself in 10 years, and then 10 years later you ask him, and he says it's myself in another 10 years, and it's like envisioning like playing into that future self was what he's talking about, what makes a big difference. And I think, we all need to do that more and more, is like projecting like who do you want to be in 3 years? You know, people say like, well, how do you want to be, you know, on the other side of COVID, on the other side of, you know, this racial craziness that we're experiencing? Like, who do you want to be? You know, how do you want to act? How do you want to live? What kind of career do you want to have? Because, and then it goes back to, you know, we underestimate what we can do in 1 year. I mean, we underestimate what we can do in
10 years.
1 year, but we overestimate 3 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's just so much that we can do if we just show up every day. The other huge thing, and I can't say this enough, makes huge difference, is blocking your time. You know, I can't say it enough. It's like that task switching is just, it's proven scientifically that every time, you know, you're writing or you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and then somebody comes in and talks to you, it takes you time to get back to that task. It takes so much more time. So for me, you know, I just block out an hour. Okay, this is what I'm doing this hour. This is what I'm doing this hour. This is what I'm doing this hour. It makes a huge difference.
Yep. And are you using just Google Calendaring or any special techniques?
Yeah, I mean, mostly I use Google Calendar. You know, there's a lot of fancy ones, and I just find, you know, it takes so much time to set them up and like, you know, write down, you know, that like you can go into Asana or Trello and make it like all pretty and little boards. And, you know, you spend your whole day making an art piece out of your calendar and then you realize you got nothing done.
Yep. I totally hear that one. That's for sure. In regards to, we got a lot of women who, you know, listen to the show. We got a lot of men who have powerhouse wives or business partners or daughters. And I know one of your missions is serving and elevating and equipping women, not only to build wealth, right, but to live intentionally in all areas of your life. I'm curious, you know, I don't get as many women on the show as I personally would love. I'm a big advocate of powerhouse women. I got 2 powerhouse daughters who boss me around all the time. But in general, you know, I've been fortunate enough to work with so many women who are way freaking smarter than I am. And yet, obviously, we know there is, you know, not as many women that are real estate investors or in C-level positions, right, or executive positions. Why only are there, you know, out in the world a third or less than that, you know, successful real estate investors or professionals out there, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, part of it has to do with that it hasn't been that long for us. I mean, it hasn't been that long that we've been in the working world. It hasn't been that long where, you know, we could even vote. So I think that we're still, you know, I mean, women have done such a phenomenal job of, you know, taking their place in society. But, you know, for a long time, I mean, it was just, you know, if you wanted a secure life, you know, what did you do? You know, go find a husband, you know, women went to school to find a husband. That's not, you know, I mean, that was the way that it was. And I just think that, you know, it's this generation is really starting to see like, no, you know, I'm a woman in my own right, but I still think also with real estate investing, it has been a boys' club for a long time. It has been a place where it's like, where it's kind of been like, oh, you know, you can't understand it. It's so complicated, you know, and it's not, you know, that's the thing. It's not. And in fact, when you talk to a lot of really successful real estate investors, they're very proud of the fact that, you know, they barely graduated high school. That's always like one of the first things they'll tell you. And they're billionaires, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, I think women can do this.
Yeah. I mean, anybody can, right? And if anything, at the root of some of the fundamentals, you know, what, at least in the real estate world, you need to master and learn, what would you say some of those are for someone that's going, hey, I want to build some wealth in real estate over the next 10, 20 years? Well, what do you say to that person?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is, you know, take some control over your money. You know, stop making, make it so that you're in charge of the money, not money being in charge of you. You know, be like, oh, I have to pay the rent and there's not much left. And, you know, start figuring out like, okay, you know, where is my money going? How can I cut back? What am I spending it on? You know, like start controlling it, start feeling like you can move it around, because money needs to move. There's that old, you know, money is energy, but money is so much better when it's moving. When it's just sitting there, it gets old and stale and icky and it doesn't make any money and it loses money, in fact.
Right?
Yeah, you just got to move it. It's scary because it's like, well, I know where it is. It's in my bank account and no one's going to touch it there. And, you know, that's true, you know, but it's also not doing you any favor. So, don't be so attached to it, start controlling it, like know that you're in control of it. That's one of the things. And then the other thing is, get some education, like, read a book, get a mentor, hire a coach, do something to get supported and to make yourself feel secure enough. I mean, I have a coach, you have a coach. I mean, we all have coaches, we're always trying to up our game. We're always need support on a level where someone can help us and mentor us at any level that we're at. And then it just, don't be afraid to take a chance. It's like, if you lose a little bit of money, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. Like, I have one friend, I mean, she's old, she's doing like gazillion deals right now. I mean, I think I'm doing several, but then I talk to her and I'm like, I'm not doing anything. But she always says, like, I'll call and I'll be like, hey, it's, 100 to 120. She's like, just do the 120. Like, what's the difference? Just get the deal done. Like, you're spending so much time, like going back and forth. It's not going to make that much of a difference at the end of the day, so, I mean, we just labor over it. Like, is it right? Are we going to lose a dime? I mean, 20,000 isn't a dime, but still in the long run, for a lot of us, it really isn't that much.
Yep. And as you continue to get more into those spaces of taking risks, right, you get more feedback, whether it's, I'd never considered a failure. It's just always feedback on what I should or shouldn't do moving forward. Then, right, you really start to equip yourself with more resources and more wisdom, more confidence, more experience to actually go out there and more effectively and efficiently accomplish the goals and tasks and milestones that you set out to for in the first place. That may have taken you way longer to get there if you would have played it safe and conservative versus maybe losing a little bit. Right. One of my biggest losses, which was like $190,000 in one of my development projects, ended up making me more than 7 figures moving forward, and probably a lot faster timeline because I got in there, I got in the trenches, I pulled the trigger, I rode the bullet. It didn't land where I wanted it to, but at the end of the day, right, I was able to reload, aim a little bit better this time, and hit much closer to the bullseye, which made me more money. So you have to be willing to take those risks if you're going to build real wealth, right?
Totally. And the thing is that you really, even with a mentor, even with support, the truth is, unless you're doing it, nobody can anticipate all the questions that are going to come up. Every scenario is a little bit different, or you're dealing with a little bit of a different personality that you're not prepared for. I mean, it's just part of it, it's just part of the deal. And unless you're in it, it's like, oh, I didn't think of that. Like, I wrote this art, I blog for Bigger Pockets, and I was writing this article about how I closed, escrow on a property in November. Well, God, that's dumb. Like, who's gonna rent in November? But I didn't think about it. I just thought, well, it's new construction, well, it didn't get rented till February. But that said something like, no one anticipated, no one was like, hey, you're not gonna want to close in November. I may not have even been able to avoid it. But, I didn't learn all that unless I was in it. Now I really know that lesson. You bet I'm not going to close in November next time.
Yeah,
I can avoid it.
100% lesson learned, right? Now, as we wrap up today, in my opinion, wealth, the word, holds something true and different for everybody. And, for for most people would look at you, and say, wow, she's wealthy. She's made it. She's got a great life. And yet you're still out there grinding and hustling and having fun and investing in deals and serving women. You have wealthwarriorwoman.com and so many amazing things. What is your definition of wealth, for one, and why are you still doing what you're doing?
Good questions. For me, once I made I thought it was all about, like, if I could just make this money, it'd be so comfortable and we could travel and we could afford our life and our kids would be secure. And I just thought all the traditional things, which are really good things. Don't get me wrong. I am so grateful, but I wasn't really in purpose. And I think that, part of our life, I mean, we all want our life to mean something, at least, I think most of us do.
Yeah.
Most of us, that are that are in this world, we want to feel like, God, what was I here for? Like, what did I contribute? How did I make it better? And for me, being in purpose really changed the game for me. And that was really Wealth Warrior Woman, because I could just go and do my own thing and do my, and I don't have to necessarily, share and coach and do all that, but it gives me so much joy to see, to see other women rising up and doing what they want to do. And I think that's what it is. I think ultimately, like, I think there's studies shown that, like, there's a certain amount of money at a certain point, like, we don't really need anymore, at a certain point. And there was a time where, I went through where I was like, well, how much do I need? And then I thought, well, how much more can I contribute? And, expanded where that money could go and how it could enrich the lives of others. And so that for me is the definition of wealth. And that's why I do what I do.
I love that. The money took on a different meaning for you.
Yeah.
And it really began to matter in a different way. And I think when you can attach that, right, to something that is far beyond what dollars can actually provide you, some material possession or a house or a whatever, right? But when it really comes from a place centered in your heart that means something and makes a real difference and ties into your purpose, and it's paired with a passion, that's when you kind of hit that trifecta and it becomes something far beyond, right, just what you're going to see in your bank account.
Yeah. What's so cool about that too is that we all have that. Like, every single person that's listening to that has that already. That's not money.
Yeah.
That's just your heart. That's your soul. That's your being. But it's like, why not money and, or why not, like, have who you are and money? Right.
I always tell people, like, it doesn't have to be an either or. And just because you desire money, I'm very money motivated. I would be lying to anybody that if I told I wasn't money motivated, but I'm extremely money motivated. One, right, for my family and for the security and all the traditional reasons. But at the end of the day, I'm money motivated because I know deep down inside, based on my core values and who I want to impact and the charities and the causes and the missions that I want to support and be behind and give more gasoline to, well, guess what? The more money I have, I know I can have a much greater impact in those capacities and in those arenas. And if I don't, great, you know what? I'll still be, but I know that if I go and do those things, right, the more money I put behind those things, there's no way to argue, right, that it ultimately, with this universal law of money going and making the world go around, it's true. So, if you're a good person and you desire to have more money, never feel guilty about that. Never feel shame about that, because if you're good, money just is going to amplify and give you more of a tool, a platform, and an opportunity to show that and showcase that. Vice versa, if you're a shitty person, right, you're probably going to go do shitty things with your money too. So I was just like that. I love when people say that, right, because wanting more money shouldn't be this ugly, bad, kind of this negative stigma that it has on it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely not. And it's, it is, my best friend always says, money's the river that waters growth. And it's so true, because it's like, think about like Bill Gates right now and how much he's helping the world, with all of his resources and gathering other billionaires and taking that money. And, he's really implementing really important changes all over the world and making the world better with his money, with his resource.
It's amazing. So with all of your money and everything that you're creating and unlocking, not only for your family, ideally, what do you hope, looking back in the rearview mirror of your life, your money does for others?
I really, one, is obviously for my children. I want to make sure that they're taken care of, because let's face it, the world's not getting, easier. And, even for, I'm sure for anyone that has, small children or wherever they're at or projecting having families, you want to be able to take care of them. You want them to have a good life. Of course, they're your children. So, for sure, that's one piece. And then the other piece is I'm really inspired by women's movements. There's a couple of organizations I'm involved with. One is Mona Foundation, and they're working to alleviate poverty through gender equality and education. And I just love this mission, and I love the way they're working in different parts of the world and how much of an impact they can make, and how much it can change the lives of so many girls that would never have that have opportunities. And the way that they're living, like us in America, like honestly, almost probably the worst conditions isn't even touch like what some people in the world are living with around the world.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Well, I know a lot of people, first and foremost, you're awesome. I always love my conversations with you, and you're inspiring, your energy is infectious, and you're just always looking to serve and bring value to others. So I want to appreciate you for coming on and hanging out with us and sharing your wisdom and, just your journey with the Millionaire Mindcast family. And I know a lot of people are probably going to want to reach out to you. Many individuals want to become financially free through real estate. And I know a lot of powerhouse women are going to want to be aligned with another amazing woman like you for potential mentorship or just resources or connecting, being that you're just so generous with your time and your resources. So where can people learn more about you or find some of the amazing kind of freebies and gifts and things that you have available out there?
Awesome. Yeah. Well, they can visit my website at wealthwarriorwoman.com, WOMAN. You can email me at hello@wealthwarriorwoman.com, or you can also join my Facebook group, which is free. And I love it. The Wealth Warrior Woman Accountability Tribe, because we all need accountability.
I love it. Tamar, appreciate you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.